Good Monday morning. Very interesting weekend for me. Lots of highs, lots of lows, mostly lows for the Mets, and some highs for the Yankees, who continue to battle without their superstar and have a very, very good weekend against one of the league's best. But, man, it was rock bottom potentially for the Mets yesterday, and this is now turning into, if it isn't already, but turning into the most embarrassing season they have ever had, and they had some really, really embarrassing ones. We have to see where this goes, but we are on that track. And the ones that just pop off the top of my head, I mean, obviously losing more games than anybody in the history of baseball when they were an expansion team in 1962, that's always going to be on their resume. Of course, back then was the worst team money could buy, 1992. Bob Klapisch wrote that book about them, the Jeff Torborg Mets, highest payroll in baseball, and they were embarrassing. The 2007 Mets collapse. There's been lots of them out there. There really have been. And this one right here, with the money that is being spent, the expectations on them, what happened last year, and how they are losing these games, we are in the midst of their most embarrassing season ever, and I believe that most of the fan base is going to go from anger to apathy really quickly, and that's the worst place you can be as an organization. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
You know what, G? I'm all right. I actually had a pretty good weekend, other than, watching this Met game last night, which was an abject disaster. I mean, and Gary Cohen talked about it, the guys that they brought in from the bullpen were just brutal. I mean, I don't know what to say about Jeff Brigham, and I don't know what to say about playing with rookies. And, Beatty's a guy that we all wanted up here. Beatty's been relatively good in the field, and he makes a crucial error yesterday. Yesterday it was him. Day before that it was this guy. The day before that it was this one. And it always comes down to one or two plays late in these games that somebody is making a mistake, whether it be Brandon Nimmo dropping a pop, whether it be Vogelback getting thrown out at second. You can go on and on and on and on and on. All of a sudden in the ninth inning, with the exception of the Phillies in the eighth inning, who were not swinging at bad pitches, all the Met batters get up there and they swing at pitches in the dirt, and they have check swing and they get called out on the swings, and you're like, this is why they're losing. And it's just one thing after the next. And the bullpen is one of the worst in the league right now. Let's be honest.
Yep.
If the Yankees have the best bullpen in the league, which they do, and then you compare that to the Mets' cavalcade of gas cans that they're bringing in, it is just it's so hard to watch. And then to lose to the Phillies the way that they did yesterday, I mean, I felt so bad for Brigham. I was like, Buck, I know he's got to pitch the three batters. You got to get him the hell out of there.
Yeah.
You got to get him the hell out of there.
Obviously, he gets started off horrible. Beatty didn't help him. It got the whole thing started, and then a walk and two hit batters back to back. I mean, it was just...
And then it's like, who do you turn to, right? Well, who's available, who's not available? Ottavino was supposedly not available, but then he says after the game he was available. Not that he's a panacea either. I mean, he's had his crushing moments as well. And I go back to this, and I was looking at this morning. I was telling you, when you take into account their tax number, what they have to pay for overgoing the $233 million tax threshold. I mean, their salary all in is like $375 million. $375 million. And all these guys want to get paid. They all want their contracts. And they look like they have no idea what they're doing. I mean, from the poor fielding to the poor base running to the inability to come up with a big hit in a big moment. And then on top of all of that, just not being able to shut anybody down with a bullpen that is just right now on fumes.
Yeah, if you look back 31 years ago to that 1992 team that was called the worst team money could buy, their payroll that year, and I know everything changes in 30 years, but their payroll, $45 million, and that was the most in baseball at the time. Now you're paying each one of those pitchers at the top of your rotation, in Scherzer and Verlander, basically that same amount of money. Both of them that same amount of money, and when you have Steve Cohen, you knew that the number was going to be high. You knew that he was going to be near or atop that list every single year, and that's what we wanted. What we didn't want was to be the laughing stock of baseball any longer, and that's what you also thought you were going to get with Steve Cohen was you weren't going to be that team that everybody looked at, LOL Mets, and they can't get it right, and Bernie Madoff, and everybody that they sign is a bum, and all these things that we heard about. Steve Cohen was supposed to come in and essentially be a panacea when it came to that stuff, and who knew if we'd actually win some championships or not, but at least we're going to be a laughingstock. You're going to be in the mix every single year, and here we are in year 3 of his regime as the laughingstock again. And it's just amazing. I mean, and when you root for teams like the Mets, like the Jets, like I do with the Vikings, when you get used to the losing, there's times where things happen where you say it's finally going to be different. It's finally going to be different, and that's the way we felt when Steve Cohen bought the team. Now, I'm not saying it's his fault. It's not all his fault. It's not really his fault at all. But here we are again, and it's every single team, player, fan in Major League Baseball looks at this team as a joke, including their own fan base. And I still saw anger yesterday on Twitter. I still heard it in Gary Cohen's voice where it seemed like he was putting a lot of this at the feet of Buck Showalter. But as we turn into July and July 4th, and all of us are going to be outside in pools and beaches and enjoying ourselves, and this team is just floundering, it's going to go from being angry and throwing the remote down to not even picking up the remote and putting them on.
Well, you're already emotionally divested.
Detached, yes.
Detached, divested.
Yes.
How about divest?
No, I like detached.
Detached,
emotionally detached, yes.
I mean, you're not, so I don't know. Did you watch much of these games this weekend?
Well, I mean, when they were winning, sure. I mean, plus I didn't move out of my bedroom yesterday. So, yes, I was watching sports. I was watching the end of The Travelers with Keegan Bradley. I was laughing as Jeff Brigham was lighting the entire stadium on fire. And I just great. This is just great. This is make it as bad as it can get. Why not? I mean, at this point, I know they're not going to come back and make the playoffs. So just get as miserable as possible. So yeah, no, I was paying attention to it.
Right, and we were gone, and they traded Escobar. So
Yep.
I'm assuming that this is a sign of things to come, and to try to bolster. I would imagine, a minor league system that may be devoid of some talent, but I don't know. I don't know what it means. I don't know. They're 15 games out of first place now. The Braves have just went on a 9-1 run.
Yeah,
and we were talking about the Mets here, and they had 16 games. Now they have 13 games before we get to the end of the first half. And we were talking about, because of the teams that they're going to play, maybe, just maybe, they can go like 12-4. They still can. I mean, I hope for the players in that dugout, I hope that somehow they find a way to turn it around. I hope that they make all of us eat our words. But it is really, really hard right now to see any silver lining anywhere. Because if your main guys, who have all been relatively healthy, with the exception of Pete Alonso missed, 10 days or whatever, but he's back in the lineup now. This team has been relatively healthy at all positions.
Yeah, and that's something we've talked about the entire year. I mean, it really has been amazing. It's not like the Yankees, who are potentially missing Aaron Judge to, who knows, September at this point. It has nothing to do with that. No, by the way, I mean, you talk about the Mets and making us eat our words, and I mean, they're 8 games out of the freaking wild card.
I know
now.
that. I know.
I mean, it's not. We're talking about 8 games, not out of the division, out of the wild card.
And the point for them is that they're like one of the worst teams in the NL right now. And the other thing is that, let's face it, they've had maybe just a glimmer of hope they showed about 3 weeks ago. And then that was all taken away by the Cardinals.
Yeah. I mean,
and then all of a sudden they went right back into the abyss that is just – now the question is, who do you blame? I mean, I certainly want to blame the high-paid players. I mean, the players that are making all this money that are not coming through. One of your high-paid players gets suspended for 10 days. One of your high-paid players starts the year on the injured list. One of your high-paid players in Lindor, for literally the better part of 6 weeks, could not come up with a key hit to save his life. And we're talking about his defensive metrics.
Yeah, so everybody wants the singular blame, and just one thing on where they are in the playoffs here before I forget, because my brain works that way. So just anybody who would call up if this team does turn it around and say, oh, you guys were negative, today has to be the day. It has to be the day, because there's not a singular Met fan that is out there that believes that this team is going to come back and make it to the postseason as we sit here this morning, but yet a bunch of them will call and say how negative we were if they come back and do it. There are 4 teams worse than them in the National League. 4 teams.
Right.
The Pirates, the Cardinals, the Nationals, and the Colorado Rockies. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ahead of them in the wild card race. 8 games out. Of course, you mentioned the 15 in the division. So tell me today how they're going to do it and if they're going to do it, because I don't want to hear it if they turn around and say, well, I thought they were going to be great and you guys thought they stunk. But as far as the blame goes, everybody wants to say, is it Buck? Is it Billy Epler? Is it the players? Is it that? And it's all of it. It's absolutely all of it. I mean, and Steve Cohen is a part of it as well because, he's the one who is in charge basically of bringing in these guys, trusting certain managers, trusting certain players, giving the go-ahead on spending the money. Of course, some blame has to be at his feet, but I still want him to be my owner over anybody else in Major League Baseball because of the commitment that he has financially to the organization. But, the more I think about it, I'm going farther and farther away from Buck and more towards Billy Epler and Sandy Alderson for identifying some of these players that they were going to use Steve Cohen's money and investing it into. I mean, let's just think about having a billionaire friend. Got a billionaire friend says, all right, I trust you guys with stocks. And here's a whole bunch of money. And it's up to Boomer and Gio, who are stock. We're not really stock guys, but you guys are the stock guys. And when one of us is Billy Epler, one of us is Buck Showalter, and we basically invested our money in really, really bad stocks.
Batteries.
I mean, think about it. Yeah, right. E-bike batteries. But think about really, really bad stocks. And that's what it was. You spent way too much money on Francisco Lindor, way too much money on Max Scherzer, way too much money on Justin Verlander. Obviously, the Edwin Diaz thing is tough, but that was $100 million, and now all of a sudden we're going to miss him for an entire year. Starling Marte, who was really, really good last year, ends up getting hurt in a key moment and then comes back this year and has not been the same. I mean, you could just go on and on and on. Kodai Senga, a lot of money there. So that's basically what it is the billionaire gave you the green light to go ahead and spend the money, and you spend it on a bunch of schlubs. And the manager is not going to be able to fix it. Now, I know Gary Cohen sounded disgusted, and Evan even tweeted this out, and I thought the same thing when I was listening to him at the end of the game.
I thought you were emotionally detached.
Well, I mean,
you're not emotionally detached.
No,
I hear it. I hear it out of your voice. I got to tell you.
Well,
you still love the Mets.
What do you want me to do? Sit here and just be like, it doesn't care, it doesn't matter, and let's just go home? Because I'd love to say that, but I can't.
I don't want you.
I'll sit here and talk about golf for 4 hours. It'd be more interesting to me than talking about these losers. But we have to do it because this is our audience. I swear to God, I will talk about golf for 4 hours and enjoy it more than talking about these a-holes. I hate them. I can't stand it. It's just awful. I mean, and last year was fun. We had a blast last year with the Mets until we didn't. It was a lot of fun, and this summer's not going to be that way. But I can't put it at the feet of Buck Showalter. He didn't want to use David Robertson yesterday. He didn't want to use Adam Ottavino. I would have gone to Robertson because, honestly, the more that you lose, the more that you're going to be out of it, and every single win is critical, and losing that game yesterday was going to be a disaster for them as it was. But, it's not just Jeff Brigham. It's all these other guys that are in there,
of course. Too. I think they're probably up to about 27 or 28 pitchers now, I think. Yeah. And, they got one of the worst pitching staffs in all of baseball. Like I said, especially when it comes to the bullpen.
Yeah.
The bullpen is basically, pull up full serve. Here it comes, and here comes the gas right after it.
Yep.
Boom.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
I don't know what to tell you.
It's not going to get better. And that's the thing about it. It's just not going to get better. They can't at the trade deadline at this point. I know we're talking about over a month away, but they'd have to play out of their minds, and I don't think they're capable of it. They're not at the trade deadline going to go out there and buy now. Are you kidding me? You can't do that. You have to sell some of these pieces off. You already did it with Escobar, and they basically did that. They paid his entire salary to get the prospects they wanted. Probably
that's another way to use the money, though.
It is.
And that's a smart way to use the money. If you're gonna spend it, at least maybe spend it to get rid of some guys and bring in some potential, players that may show up somewhere. Because right now, where are they getting any sort of relief pitching?
They're not. And especially when you talk about the teams that are actually in it. You get about 3 or 4 decent relievers on the market every year at the trade deadline that every team wants. That's what happens. Every team wants them, and then you end up overpaying for them. You think the Mets are going to do that? 15 games out of first and 8 games out of the wild card, and maybe get slightly better by the trade deadline? No. They are finished, man. It's over. It's here. We're in the last week of June. It's the last week of June, and I don't want to hear it from anybody. It's June 26th. Next week, we're going to be talking about July 4th week. We're going to be off. It's the last Carton and Roberts on June 30th. The station's going to be changing, new lineup, and the Mets are dead. All of those are facts. All of those are facts.
Going to be crying on June 30th?
I mean, we won't be crying on June 30th, but there might be some crying on June 30th.
Think there'll be some crying?
There was already been some crying.
Eddie,
we played
what
a
do you
bunch
think?
of crying.
You think more crying?
Little bit of crying.
Little bit of crying.
Who does the crying?
I don't think Craig or Evan will cry. I think there might be a Tiki or Tierney cry. And we already, if there's any more crying on the DA show, I mean, that's just going to be, come on. That's going to be like Barbara Walters in there. I know she's passed, but she used to get everybody to cry. But I mean,
get Oprah in there.
There can't be any more crying on that show. But anyway, yeah, I mean, the facts are that they're done. They are done. And if they came back somehow and ended up turning this season around, it would be a true miracle. It would be. And then you'd have the miracle Mets as well. It would be a miracle because they're not good enough. They're constructed poorly. Their manager is completely confused right now. They don't have a general manager who knows how to fix anything, and the owner doesn't care enough to make big changes during the season. Or at least it's not his personality.
But how are you going to make big changes?
I mean, just like I said.
I mean, it's like you're stifled. You have what you have, and you either have to do what you did with Escobar, pay the salary, and bring in the prospects, or you got to sit here and you just got to wait it out, and you got to go through this whole season and see whether or not there's any light at the end of the tunnel anywhere.
Let me ask you this: would you trade Verlander and Scherzer?
Yeah, but nobody's going to want them, and you're.
What if he's paying the money like you did with Escobar?
Yeah,
just get him out of here and be like, you know what, enough of this. I've had it.
Yeah, They may have no trade clauses too. I'm not sure, but
that's where I'd start.
But I don't
get them the hell out of here. Let's just
start
cleaning house, man. Just start cleaning your basement out.
He's got him here for next year.
Whoa, great! Can't wait. Can't wait for that opening day. Who's going to pitch, Verlander or Scherzer? Get rid of these losers. And that's where you want to start. You really want to start making some change? Do it with those guys. Somebody will take them.
Yeah, but you have no replacements for them.
Who cares? You're out of it. Doesn't matter. What are you going to do? Bring these two schmucks back last year of $40-something million and try to do it again?
Yes,
see, that's stupid. I'm sorry. That's just flat out stupid.
And maybe Kodai Senga is in a better situation. Maybe Jose Quintana is going to be back.
Oh my God.
Then all of a sudden things look a little bit different.
Jose Quintana's going to be
plus you'll have Diaz back next year.
Oh, okay.
Which will make the
back.
Which will make the bullpen better.
Run it back.
But that's next year. We're not.
You should be talking about next year. This year's over. This year is over. Now, if the front office needs to be talking about is how do we make sure this doesn't happen next year, and do we got to tear this thing completely down and then just go from there, or do we try to fill in the pieces and try to compete next year? That's what the question.
Well, they're going to try to fill in the pieces and compete next year. That's what happens when you have the richest owner in the sport.
Okay, but
but it
hasn't worked to this point.
He's not going to stop. Well, it worked last year to a point until the end of the year.
Yeah.
And they thought by adding Verlander and losing DeGrom and adding Senga and Quintana that they were going to be better.
Piece of crap.
There you go.
Mercenary piece of crap. That's where I would start. I would start by I would trade those two guys and signifying that we're turning the page and this was a mess and this was the wrong idea. That's where I would start if I were Steve Cohen.
That's not happening.
Well, that's too bad because then we're just going to have to sit here and suffer and say the same things next year, which is they overpaid two guys who don't have it anymore, and those are the faces of this franchise. I mean, but you're all right about being locked in. It's not going to be easy to do any of this stuff. But Lindor's another one. I mean, if anybody would, I would do what the Marlins did with Giancarlo Stanton with Francisco Lindor. I'd get rid of him for pennies on the dollar and then pay some of his salary. Just get him out of here.
Who's your shortstop?
I don't care. Here's the thing. You figure it out from there. But you know it's not working right now. It's not. It's just not. So you're going to have him for the next how many years? No, honestly, I'll call up anybody from Double-A. Figure it out. Look at the free agents. That's Billy Epler's job. One thing I know is this sucks. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you're looking through the refrigerator, and the thing that you ate last night that sucked, you're not going to eat again, and you go, what am I going to have for lunch? I don't know. I'll figure it out. There's 10 million restaurants in the zip code. I'll figure it out. But what I do know is this thing sucks, and that's what it's been.
Are you yelling at me?
Yes, I'm yelling.
Are you yelling at me?
No.
You're not yelling at me. Because I just like
tired of these
I
things
know that you were
suck.
throwing up about 8 hours ago.
No, it was about 24 hours ago.
Oh, it was about 24 hours ago. Okay. I just feel like you're yelling at me.
I know. I'm sorry. I just can't. Like, how many times in our lives have we sat here and talked about how disappointing the Mets are? I have probably spent out of what? We're talking 41 years. I'll probably 50% of the sports words that have come out of my mouth. Nah, more than that. I'll say 60%.
60% of the sports words. Sports
that I've talked about in my life.
Talk about sports.
Sports that I've talked about in my life have been about how disappointing the Mets have been. On and off the air. 60% of it. It's just over
that much time talking about the Mets being that disappointing?
Yes, because everybody in my life is a Mets fan. We do it here for a living. It's the longest season. It has gotten to the point, it's just enough already. It's enough. I can't take it anymore.
You want to go to the Met game this week?
No, you won't. You couldn't drag my dead body into that place. I'm telling you, I would wake right up like a zombie and I'd start eating everybody. No, I would revolt. My dead body would wake up and revolt if you got me anywhere near Citi Field. Give me a break. God, I actually drive. I drive out of my way on my way home just so I don't see it. I go like 15 miles out of the way on my way home and a half an hour just so I don't see it on my way home. All right, let's take a break.
Yeah, we'll please, let's do that. And I have a little bit of advice for Aaron Judge.
Oh, do you?
How's that?
Okay, that sounds good. How about you save that for after Jerry's update?
Jerry's update,
yes, because that'd be wasting an entire segment.
I wouldn't want to waste a segment.
We don't want to do that on a day like today. So what we'll do is we'll hear from Jerry, and then after Jerry, Boomer's got some advice for Aaron Judge. It is Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network.